Hi there, I'm your host Clive Serkin, and welcome to the Unstuck podcast, where we're on a journey to help you get control of your work environment, get yourself unstuck, and perform to your full potential. My guest today is Alycia Mason, who is now the Denver Field Vice President of McDonald's, and we're going to talk about that in a while. She's a former colleague of mine, a longtime media agency executive, and a candy store proprietor, which we'll also get into later. So welcome, my friend. Thank you for making time. I know you're wildly busy.
Oh, thank you, Clive. I was so excited when you reached out. I've been listening to these podcasts and I love them. So happy to be here.
I appreciate it. You know, the essence of these podcasts is to talk about people and their journeys. And I try to get people on who have had a non-conventional road and journey and have done interesting things and approached the world slightly differently. And you fit the bill. And, you know, so I found it interesting because it was like introducing you as field vice president of McDonald's, right?
Yeah.
And on the surface, feels like not typical, right? So you look at your career, this wouldn't be the dot that would come next if you thought about it conventionally. So probably smart to just talk about what the role is. And then we can go back and sort of track how this happened and why it's happening and your approach to things. But what is the role?
So the role at McDonald's, we have almost 14,000 restaurants and we are divided up into 10 field offices. And each one of these field offices, think of them as, you know, like a little mini country. So the Denver field office, I think about as the size of Germany. And so my role is really the mini CEO or the general manager of that region.
So it's not just Denver. Okay.
Yes. Sorry, it's not just Denver. That's where the physical field office happened to be, but it's across 11 states. So everything from Utah to Minnesota up to the Canadian border, and then the southern part of Kansas and Colorado. And so really, you know, the role as in any, you know, C-level or any general manager job is actually just leadership. It is setting a vision. It's inspiring and motivating. It's bringing people along. It's developing talent, finding the right talent, putting them in the right roles. That's what the job is. I do oversee that everything from the operations to the finance, to the marketing, to the development, and just really run a cross-functional team, of course, with our owner operators as well as our agency partner. So it is a very different world, yes, than I started in back in my days at Mindshare and Ogilvy.
So before we go back to the media days, you joined McDonald's. I'm losing track of time, but this is your third role in McDonald's. So you came in in a media digital role, and then you got promoted to chief experience officer for the US, as I understand, and then this role. So talk about that journey. And one of the things that strikes me, and we talked a little bit about this, is McDonald's philosophy to talent that doesn't pigeonhole you, because you and I experienced in another world. We had a senior executive who had a point of view that sort of said, if you like a media or agency person, that's your life, right?
Yeah.
And jumping from an agency to a client is a big jump in and of itself. But the perspective was you wouldn't be a general manager. You couldn't be a general manager because you lacked the historical P&L experience, et cetera, et cetera. And I always sort of bristled at that notion because I always felt talent is talent. And clearly McDonald's has looked at you and said, you're an outstanding talent. We're going to make a commitment to grow you and we're not going to pigeonhole you, albeit you spend, you know, a chunk of time in these two roles proving your chops in the space that you're more comfortable with. Am I reading it right? Is that how?
You're absolutely reading McDonald's career philosophy, and not just a philosophy, but how the leaders, and in particular the leaders that I've been working with for the last 4.5 years, have actually behaved. And I think it's one thing to say it on paper, but then the second is like actually making it happen. And I'm proof of that. And it really started, technically there's 4 roles within McDonald's. One is like not like on LinkedIn. So my first role when when I got there was the VP of Media and CRM. And I was thrilled. Morgan Flatley was my boss. She's an amazing, amazing marketer, businesswoman, mom, mentor, you name it. She's the full package. And about 3 months in, at the time, digital was still a very small percent of the McDonald's business. This was in 2019. It was over in the IT department. So it was definitely not maybe, let's say, customer and commercially led, all the time. It was, in a different part. And they were moving it into marketing. So it would be more customer centric, drive greater profitability, all of those things. And she came to me and she said, what do you think about running it? And I was like, you do know I've never done this before. I've done digital marketing, but not like a digital commerce channel. And I remember her being like, you're going to be great at it. We believe in you. Like, you'll be great. You'll learn. You're eager to learn. You're hungry to learn. I was like, okay, buckle up. Here we go. And it was just a fantastic ride. And so they put me with the right team. They gave me the right support. Of course, I had to, prove myself and learn and, do all that. Then as digital really grew for us and just exploded, it was an opportunity to once again to get a bigger remit, to take on the delivery business, to take on more of the full customer experience end to end, working much more in partnership with our operations and our people team and our field team. And it was just something that it's just a phenomenal growth in my career, but just, from a talent standpoint, so blessed. So then there was the opportunity of what do you want to be when you grow up? Where are you going? And I was like, I don't know, this is great. And, it obviously could be a traditional CMO path, but they see the potential. And not just they see the potential, they show there are different paths and different opportunities. And so one of the opportunities is to go more into the general management path. And I raised my hand and I said, yeah, I'm all in. And so went and did some training, and then here I am. But it speaks to McDonald's uses a talent philosophy. Morgan would call it, instead of like a ladder, it's like a jungle gym. And you build your expertise, not always by just going up the ladder in your function, but more broadly going across the organization. And I can count numerous people that on my team have moved to, different things outside of media and advertising and digital, but as well as leaders across the board. I think it's a great way to invest in talent and their growth in the long term.
I mean, I've always felt, and I love it, when I first started in the agents business, it was the language was like vertical growth, right? And then as I developed in my career, it was like it became really clear to me early that the more muscles you build, the better you will be over time. And if you don't measure it in terms of the size of the title and the size of the paycheck, which are not insignificant things, but if they become consequential outcomes, if you build your muscles and don't get crazy about what's the next title, but rather what's the next experience, and you're living proof of that, and it makes for a better human, right? Because the minute you're doing the same thing over and over and over again, it's like, what's the point?
Yep.
Right? Like if you're not a little bit in over your skis, which has sort of been I'm always in over my skis, as you know, but it makes it exciting, no? Like you're doing things now that are like you would never thought you had done.
No, I mean, have I ever thought that I would be making franchising decisions for, generations, to come? Helping, decide of the type of development, of where McDonald's goes, setting a strategy for, millions of customers served every day. So absolutely not. And it's one of those, it makes me a better person, but I also think it makes me a better teammate when I am at the table with other people, because I have a broader experience. I can more easily see different points of view because while I maybe have not sat in their shoes, I do have a broader understanding of the business or the consumer or the problem we're trying to tackle.
And timing always, it's like timing is everything. And you hit the digital and then the experience role at a really interesting time in McDonald's sort of journey. Talk about some of the things, because I was watching from the sidelines. There was some pretty crazy innovation that happened during that period, right?
Yeah, it was. I mean, I hate to say that a good thing came out of COVID because it was such a devastating time for us, obviously, as humans and the globe. But one of the things it did make us as a business is have to really hunker down and focus on the things that mattered most. How do we simplify, for our crew and keep them safe? How do we deliver things to our customers in a safe and, different way? So it really had to spur our thinking differently. thank goodness we had invested and built the infrastructure and the base before. So we were probably about 10% digital prior to COVID, and that'd be kiosk, that'd be app, or that'd be delivery. And we sit at today 1 in 3 transactions, which is just phenomenal. I think the biggest thing, if you think in a business of $45 billion, that is a huge amount of shift. But I think one of the biggest things that we learn internally going through that, you can build all the tools you want and you can build all the innovation, but really helping people along the change curve of what does this now mean for your job? When you're serving, all the way down to a crew person, when now 1 in 3 transactions are done, on a digital screen, what does that really mean for you? It's no longer in a delivery order. It's not the customer that you see in front of you. The courier is the customer to get to the next customer. So really kind of retraining thinking, even internally, on how you market customer benefits differently. It's not just our delicious food, but convenience now looks different for us. So it was a huge learning curve. But at that moment in time, everyone really spurred because of COVID. We had to change, and this was our moment to do it, and actually would make us stronger on the other side, which it has.
And for sure, it has huge. I mean, the title you had was Chief Experience Officer, and I don't know if that's the remit is truly understanding the experience. But when I look at your business relative to the businesses I grew up, without a doubt, the experience that a consumer has with your brand is not just the experience of the product in and of itself. It's the entirety of it, and every chain link in the chain, and you're as strong as your weakest link. Mm-hmm. In your world, there's a lot more dimensionality because, if the burger doesn't eat well, or the fries don't eat well, or the whatever, you're not in business. But even if it's like world class and you have a shitty experience, excuse me, I'm sure that's a technical term. At some point in the store or some point in the equation, you're losing the battle, right?
We've lost the red thread, I would say, on it. So one of the things that spurred this notion of looking at customer experience end to end was about 7 or 8 years ago, there were only 4 customer journeys in McDonald's. So I think 7 or 8 years old. That is not that long ago. And the 4 customer journeys were you went to the front counter or the drive-through and you paid cash or credit card. That was it. That's how you got your food. That was it. And so today there might be a little bit more now, but this was 32 at the time when we looked at this, when we were starting to do 22 planning. It was like 32 different journeys on how what ordering channel, what fulfillment channel, what payment channel. Who is looking at all of these customer journeys end to end, and how are we solving more holistically and not just in silos? And not just solving for a product need, but solving for, a customer benefit need across the entire journey. So that was really the impetus of that. I have to say, when I was in it, I probably spent more time with my ops partners and my technology partners and my field partners than I did my marketing partners, because that customer experience was really, in our case, it was everything from their mobile phone to the physical footprint of the store. And that needed to be rewired to deliver on our promise of being convenient, being accessible, all being speedy, all of those things.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like a broken record, and I'm sure I've said this before to you, and I keep saying it on the thing. It's like, as a marketeer, I would always say invest all your dollars in your experience before you spend on conventional communication, because the experience isn't great. It's no point driving people into a shitty experience. Yeah. And then the airlines are a great example of that. It's like, you don't need to have massive billboards. Let's not pick an airline, because I once did that and I got myself in trouble because they were in the audience. But pick the airline. It doesn't matter. You could have all these great ads that say the airline's terrific, but if the in-flight, in-airport experience sucks, it's no point.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that that's so central to you. And by the way, you made a comment that, prior to this journey, that IT and digital, and marketing were 2 separate things. And you can't not have them fuse. And you happen to be very lucky because you have a world-class CIO who totally gets it. My
Yes.
friend Brian Wright.
Yes, I do.
So
We have that in common. I will say the one thing of, and it's a tightrope to do. You don't want to launch something that's not a great experience, or create something. However, in the world that we're going, that technology is changing, customers' expectations are changing so fast. We have to balance this notion of progress over perfection. It's never going to be perfect, and so, or there will be a technology glitch. Wi-Fi can go down or something like that. And so the balance of when is it like good enough and better than the current experience to get it out there, knowing there are still tweaks. Let me tell you, I am phone call number one to my friends and family whenever they have an experience problem, which does happen at our scale. But yeah, so it's been a fantastic learning journey. And I do think, while I have benefited and a lot of internal folks at McDonald's have benefited from the career philosophy at McDonald's, I do think it makes us a better brand for our customers and our crew.
100%. Let's go back to the beginning. I think it was the beginning. So your first part of your career, which was like, I don't know what, 18 years, give or take, 17, 15, 16, something like that, in the media agency world.
20, yeah, I think it's like 20 now. Oh my
20.
gosh.
So it seems like not that long, but as I recall it, like you did like 3 stints at Mindshare, you did an OMD, you actually did one client side, you did eyewear, right?
Exotica retail, yes, yeah. That was interesting. I learned a lot there.
And then, and then obviously Starcom and that. So that was more of a traditional career path, right? It was you were moving into different experiences, or, granted you worked at 3 different media companies and 2 other things. But it was basically the same progression.
Yep.
Talk about that part of your career, and then how did it lead to the move to McDonald's? And was one better than the other, or is it just part of the journey? Or how do you think about those things? And you are a pretty discipline focused person as far as I think.
Yes.
So
yeah.
How clinically were you planning this thing, or how organic was it?
Yeah, it's fascinating because I'm a very disciplined person, including waking up at 4:15, which I'm known for. So yeah, very disciplined. But the ironic piece is I'm not disciplined at all from a career standpoint in my career path. So if you start with let me start with how I view the world of career paths, and I'll get into agency versus client, because I've learned a lot on both sides, good and bad. And so they're just different. I wouldn't say one's better than the other. They're just different. So when I think about careers, I think about kind of 2 paths. Number one, the end state. You understand, I want to be a CMO, or I want to be a CEO, or I want to be a lawyer. Or there is more of the path of the journey is the path, and wherever you end up is where you end up. And that is definitely, I'm the latter. So we'll see where I end up. Yeah, I don't know. I think that's a part of it. A part of how I'm like that is, and this is probably not a very well-known fact, I'm the first one in my family to go to college. I'm the only one that works in corporate America. So you take my background, I would say a pretty humble, kind of more of a blue collar, kind of upbringing, and you marry that with, I'm a really curious person. I love to learn. That's just who I am. And so putting me in a box to be like, I didn't even know what the box was, I'll be honest. My advertising icon was Angela Bauer on Who's the Boss. I was like, that's amazing.
That's classic.
So, that. Oh, and then I read Ogilvy on advertising. I'm like, I'm hooked. So yes, there was David Ogilvy in that, not just Angela Bauer. So it's one of those of I just didn't know what was possible. Truly, even when McDonald's, talked to me about a role other than just a CMO role, wow, I didn't even think that was possible. So that's really been what guides me. I call it the 3 Ps is when I have a role. So I'm not going after a role or a title. I'm going after a role that encompasses what I call the 3 Ps. First off is people. I'm going to spend more time with these people than I am my own family of waking hours. So they better, they have my same values and push me, and I need to enjoy them because it's so important. So a lot of what I've done in my career is actually follow great people or latch on to great people, like a Morgan Flatley. The second is I call it purpose. I am, I'm going to give 110% whatever I do. So I need to have roles that I feel I'm making meaningful purpose and change and meet 80. And I've been able to do that. And the last one, and you mentioned this word, and it's something I talk about, is I need it push. I need I've done 70% of the job, 30% I have no idea. I will say McDonald's has maybe altered that ratio for me a bit, than I'm maybe more comfortable with at times. But so that's just how I view whenever it's a new opportunity. Well, how does it deliver on those 3 Ps, and can I do that? So so I've started in my career at the agency side in media, and I did go client side. I was about 10 years in. So I was a director, so I was somewhat senior in the agency, had worked on a few clients and got a call. So I would say kind of the lessons that I have learned, or some of the differences on the 2 sides. And once again, I love them both. One's not right or wrong. They're just different.
Right.
The first lesson, and was probably a hard lesson because I made a mistake at Luxottica, is I learned the importance of culture. And so I was at 2 different agencies, and they were obviously distinct cultures. It's still an agency, a marketing, creative culture. Yeah,
Right.
And so when I was interviewing, now looking back, I just allowed them to interview me. I didn't interview them enough on what that culture is. And I didn't have enough forward thinking to be like, that culture is going to be so wildly different. It's foreign owned. It's the first time they've ever been in a recession in their company's history. There were so many different things I did not think about the culture, and it was not a culture fit. So I'll get to the punchline. I knew it almost immediately. And so that is just one thing. And McDonald's, while it's a client, or a brand,
Right.
It is more like the agency culture, really fast paced, just a more creative atmosphere. And so understanding the culture fit and what do you work best in and what brings out the best in you. I would say the second thing I've learned going to the brand side or the client side, and I'm sure, I think you always did a really good job of this, but it's you have to become a translator. And what I mean, it's you have to take marketing, media, creative speak and translate it to business results in a much more deeper level. And that for me, I actually really enjoy. And so I think you do that on the agency side, and especially as you get more senior. But as you come to the client side, it is a different expectation, and it just is different. And that part I do enjoy. And the last part, I call it the power of the peers. And I don't know if this is just a McDonald's thing. But when I left the agency, I was fairly senior. I was running a small little company called Kellogg's. You might be familiar with. And it was great. But yes, my peers were they were other client leads. And so I use my peer set, who I still talk to a lot today, but more to, get best practices, quite frankly, just have a good vent session, perhaps over a drink at Catch. You never know, but
you would never vent about your client, right?
Never vent, especially not about Kellogg's.
I just want to make sure about this.
But so what I found coming to the client side, and specifically McDonald's, going back to the operations technology, the power of your peers, I had to not just go get a best practice. We had to work together to create an experience. And so we were very interdependent on our success. And that was just a little bit different than the agency side in terms of what the success was and how to work in a different environment.
In sort of that, the 2 thoughts I have. One is, and you've mentioned Morgan a lot, and she obviously has, she's an incredible reputation. There's an old HBR article, and I'm talking maybe even mid-'80s, late '80s. I can't remember. It's called Pygmalion in Management, on the premise of My Fair Lady. But at the heart of it was kind of if people on your team know that you believe in them because you do believe in them, you genuinely believe in them, whether you explicitly say it or not, they will feel it and they will perform to that expectation. And so it sounds to me that most certainly in this part of your career, but of your career, you've had the Morgans of the world. Absolutely. And other leaders and I get that sense from Chris Gates, other leaders who make you feel that you believed in.
Yep.
And therefore you are more comfortable and confident going from 80-20 of stuff to stuff you don't know to 70-60, I know that you're passionate about that and mentoring and coaching. It's how has that evolved over your career, and how big a part of it is as a leader to you?
Yeah, I think it's evolved a lot and it's a much bigger. So I've actually had 2 mentoring sessions today. One, interesting enough, was someone I worked with at Mindshare probably 20 years ago or maybe 15 years ago. So it's still there today. So I have been you're absolutely right. I have been so fortunate to have both direct bosses, but I will say even clients that I very much, they believed in me. And even if they didn't always say it, I felt it. But I also felt that I had the latitude, if I made a mistake, and I make mistakes like all of us, that they had my back. And I wasn't like, there I go. I'm,
Right.
there's brand Alycia or, so creating that culture, I do think it gets more out of people because you're willing to push yourself, grow yourself, take a risk, fail, learn from it, and go back and do it better. And if you don't have that support, and I think if you don't have that support in your direct boss, but even on the agency side, if you don't have that support in your client, you are not probably going to be at your fullest potential. So as I have gotten more, experience, to me, the mentorship as well as sponsorship is so critically important. And one of the things that I've been pushing myself to from a mentorship is not to just do, I would say, people either like me or people with similar kind of career trajectories and paths. So how can I mentor people that, maybe don't have the desire to get to the C-level or have, different kind of backgrounds than I do. So that's been really important. But also this notion, and this probably is just in the last few years have been more important to me, is making sure I have a sponsor at the table that's not just my direct boss, that can be an advocate for me and really understand where I want to go. And that was very critical in actually me getting this current role. But then also providing that wisdom to, people younger in their career of, who's that sponsor for you at the table besides your direct boss? Who's speaking on your behalf? Because you're not in that room a lot of times when decisions are being made. So make sure that you are overtly going and asking for that sponsorship and getting that seat at the table, even when you're not in the room.
Well, it's crucial. I mean, I'd say one of the most pleasant, unplanned sort of rewards that I've felt in my career now that I'm, old and washed up is, and I never thought about it this way, and I never anticipated it, is the joy of seeing people you've worked with or people you've mentored or people you've, helped or listened to once in a while, and you see them, and it's not just about going into like big roles, which is great, but when you pick up a phone or you shoot them a note and you go, how's it going? And they go like, it's, things are phenomenal. And it's not, or they took a hit and then bounced back and they were like, I've never been better, and this was designed. For me, that's like one of the greatest rewards that I never anticipated, because I went in it sort of 2-dimensionally as I started my career, and then as it goes on, I was lucky enough to have some great mentors.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm sure you feel the same.
It is. And I'm a parent. And so it's one of those, like, I expect it to feel, it's like pride is how I would describe it. Like I burst with pride when I hear that, from people and from people I've worked with and mentored. And as a parent, I have that with my children, but now like when it happens with others, I'm like, oh, that's so amazing. I'm so proud of you. That's great. It's a very fulfilling aspect that I hadn't thought about either.
Without a doubt. Last, I think, part of the story that I want to get into, and clearly, you obviously got a ton of time on your hands because you're in this massive role. You're raising 2 wonderful young women. You open a candy store. Are you nuts?
I think so. I think my husband and I, yes. Nuts, or maybe naive is a better word. I'm going to go with naive. I'm going to go with naive. Yeah.
So just so everyone knows, so you and your husband co-founded Candy, what's it called? Candycopia.
Candycopia, yeah.
And it's a candy store in your neighborhood?
It's in our neighborhood. We also do events in the greater Chicago area, as well as candycopia.com. So just because you're not in Oak Park doesn't mean you can't enjoy us.
So what happened? Like, what were you thinking? You were sitting around one day and go, hey, shit, I got, 10 minutes spare today. Let's open a store.
Kinda. We were sitting around in Cape Cod. We go on vacation with the same couple. Actually, met them. I met her at Mindshare, so one of my bestest friends. We go to Cape Cod almost every year. We go to the same little candy store. My husband is a huge foodie. He's a journalism person and PR by trade. Like that is what he did in corporate America. He'd been staying at home the last 7 years while I did these big jobs at Kellogg's and McDonald's. So he was awesome and stayed at home and kind of was CEO of the house. And so we were in Cape Cod. It was August of 21. And the girls were both in school now by this point. He was thinking about what to do. And we had gone to the candy store that day. That night, we're sitting around a fire with a few cocktails, eating candy. And someone said, we don't know who, but someone said, oh, Patrick, you should open a candy store. That would be funny. And that would be awesome. And it was like, haha, that's funny. So like on vacation, the girls named it. It was going to be called Sandy's Candies and Treats because we have a dog named Sandy. Like, so it was kind of just like a funny joke on vacation. Fast forward less than 10 months, June 18th, 2020, we've opened Candycopia, like full branding, brand guidelines. I mean, everything. Had to source everything. That's why I say we were naive. We had no idea. Thank God for our family and friends, because even like the night before the opening, we were like unpacking things. And I mean, it's been wild. So naive is a better word versus nuts. We did not know what we were getting into. But I'm not sure we still do.
Yeah, but that's part of the journey. You learn along the way.
Part of the journey. Yeah, we are. Yeah, it's learning. We're having a ton of fun, but we've learned a lot. It's
Oak Park. I thought it was River Forest.
It's Oak Park now.
It's officially Oak Park. Okay, I never know when the one begins and the other. I've been there, but I never know where it begins or ends.
Oh, I know. Well, technically, it's Harlem is where it like flips over. But so the whole concept was. Well, first off, there's not a candy store in Oak Park, but the whole concept was you have like these really big candy stores, like Dylan's Candy Bar, It's Sugar, like real big, over the top, all like brand, big brand names, which is awesome and serves a purpose. Or you have like really small, like mom and pops, or like a 5 and dime, or like a high end chocolate. And so you don't really have a store that's really curated with not only the classics and the big names, but then also the small batch stuff and what's unique and what's different and just, what do we love? So 40% of the store is all small batch, and it's local. Yeah. So it's either local or a lot is women and diverse candy makers. So it's just been such a great experience. So Patrick will, he has candy flights and he does candy tastings, but you can also like kid come in there and, buy a sour flush is one of the best kid selling candies. Don't even ask. But crazy. So it's been awesome. It has been awesome, but it is a labor of love for sure.
And it's never off.
Never off.
The one thing in common with both of your roles is that you know how you're doing every day.
Yes.
Right? There's no lag. Like when we started in the business.
Oh, so right.
You don't know you don't know how you're doing until after the quarter, right? Like
after the quarter close. Hourly, I can look at sales on both sides. So
you know what's going on. Listen, speaking of which, you got a lot more stuff to do, and I know it's the end of the week, and you're not even close to finishing the day. So super appreciative of you making the time. It's incredibly rewarding and enjoyable to watch your career, and I'm glad I got to understand the new role and what it's all about. And so thanks for spending the time sharing your insights and experience, and as always, fun chatting.
Yes, thank you, Clay, for having me here. It was great to see you again.
Amen.
Thank you.
This podcast was brought to you by Screen Dragon. We break down barriers, make work flow, and unlock talent. Visit ScreenDragon.com to see our software in action.